experience design through surprise and delight. That's what today is about. Zappos became well known, not only for being this biggest shoe store, being the #1 customer service brand. 90% plus NPS scores on 20,000 calls per day. People have this wow experience. That's actually the #1 core value. Deliver wow through service. Not just in front of the customer, it's every person in front of us. I remember there was this guy from New York who visited, and he started helping me with some boxes, and he goes, "What's happening to me, man? I'm being nice, I'm never nice." It's just that infectious when everybody's of service to each other. Complaints, this is the sauce. When we found a frustrated customer, it's like, yes, fantastic, here's an opportunity. The lifetime customer value of a resolved case, 2 to 6 times higher with a complaint. We gotta still have fun. We gotta still dress up in crazy outfits and do silly things. That's the power of culture. This is Zappos Insights, what we'd created to share that with the rest of the world. We are wowing, surprising, and delighting each other. Behind all this, even further than the wow, energy is behind everything. In fact, in a call center area, anybody could raise their hand and say, 1 minute dance party. We'd literally put the phone on hold, dance for a minute. Just a minute gets you so much energy. So where are my fun people at? Just come on up here. If you're gonna do something, do it 100% or don't do it at all. Now bring all that energy the rest of the day. My name's Robert Richman. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
So in these times of great change, we're either the disruptor or the disrupted. You are either subject to the change or you're creating the change. And I want to share with people how to be the disruptor, how to disrupt their industry, how to disrupt from within and disrupt the culture to bring out all the most pertinent issues and the best ideas, and how to disrupt their lives by creating change in it rather than waiting for change to happen. I'm doing this because I love disruption. I love new ideas. I love bringing new ideas to market. And when people can consciously create the change, then they are satisfied and want to stay with a company forever because they are constantly improving their own lives. I want people to walk away feeling empowered. I want them to know the frameworks for change, the tools and the hacks to make change happen.
Let's give a warm Alberta welcome to Robert Richman.
And I want to show you how to disrupt your industry, but also how to disrupt from within your own company, and even how to disrupt you. And the benefit is not just being ahead of the change, rather than being disrupted, but what you'll see as this theme is that when you disrupt, you have to put in less effort, less work to get better results. And that's what I would learn time and time again, is that experiences shift people. Experiences shift behaviors and beliefs. Who's here seen The Matrix? He's given this offer.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
The red pill wakes you up into a new reality, offers the truth of what's really going on, an opportunity for change, a conscious symbol, a metaphor of change, a metaphor of commitment, because once he swallows it, he can't take it back. And I thought, what if that could be real? I got prescription pill bottles, I put red Tic Tacs in them, and I walked up to people and said, hey, do you want to wake up to a new reality? Tapping into our unconscious minds, and I think maybe even tapping into something bigger.
By taking this pill, I will be in a great relationship by December 31st, 2020.
How'd you do? So when you're thinking about your life, thinking about your industry, your company, what I dare you to do is not wait for change to happen, is not wait for things to happen, but to actually engineer your own luck, to create it.
Try it. All it takes is willingness. You can suspend your disbelief and say, I'm going to run an experiment for a certain amount of time based on one of these hacks, and then see the results and judge for yourself.
So I talk about culture, I talk about innovation, leadership, but when I talk about customer service, it reminds me of Google headquarters, both in America and Europe, invited me in to speak about customer service because they were just starting to play that game on the phones. And so I'm in there consulting about customer service, and there's a lunch table at the European headquarters, and people from all these different nations are there. And I'm sitting next to two people from the Russian office. And we're talking through lunch, and we're talking about customer service. And at one point, the Russian woman next to me goes, yes, in Russia, they are finally paying attention to the customer. And I'm like, really? They're finally paying attention? What changed that made them suddenly pay attention to the customer? And she goes, it's because they realize the customer is the one with the money. And then the guy right next to her, without missing a beat, says, yes, in Russia, our motto is, we are not satisfied until customer is not satisfied. So, as you heard, I come from a company called Zappos. Who here has heard of Zappos before? Just so I can, okay, wow. And has anybody here actually had a customer service experience at Zappos? Oh, cool. So a lot of you know what I'm talking about. This is going to be great for you guys, too, because I'm going to be going into the game-changing secrets behind the service and the culture that really drives these results. So for those of you who don't know, just in case, Zappos is known for being the biggest shoe store in the world, but also selling apparel, beauty, all kinds of other things now. But really differentiating itself by becoming number one in customer service, and this is according to American Express's customers, not according to our own internal surveys. And for those of you who know NPS, and how many people are using NPS right now? Okay, good, solid half of you. We'll get the other half of you there. So, as you know, with NPS, it can go negative 100% to positive 100%. And on 25,000 calls coming in a day, averaging 90% NPS and above. And mind you, this is agents. Thank you. These are agents who are not working much above minimum wage even to deliver this world-class service. I'm going to show you how you don't even have to necessarily pay a lot for that. And this is why Zappos became known, as our CEO said, as a customer service company that just happens to sell shoes. So this is the original site back in the late 90s. Does anybody remember buying things online in the late 90s? Is everybody too young for that? Well, yeah, so those of you who remember, do you remember how we all got scared putting our credit card down to buy shoes? Not shoes, books, like anything. Like it might get stolen, but this idea of shoes, something so tactile, it just seems so crazy and foreign. So what was the difference maker here? It really all comes down to experience. So some of the original founders, first it was shoesite.com before Zappos, said, what makes a shoe experience so great in the store? Well, for one, you get it right away. So next day shipping was really pioneered. Order it by 4 p.m., get it the next day. That there's returns are really easy. The first really to do paid for returns rather than making the customer pay for those. And returns that can happen up to a year later. And by the way, a little secret here. You can even return them used. I'll go into why later on that. But also customer service available 24/7 with an 800 number right on the page, answering calls in less than a minute, no scripts, just really some frameworks I'm going to show you of how to create these great experiences. But one of the things we became known for as well was no call limit times. No call limit times. Do you want to guess what happens when you tell everybody that there's no call limit times? What would you guess happens? Yeah, they test it. They test it. So, does anybody want to guess what's the longest call on record at Zappos? For returning shoes, mind you. 2 hours, 4 hours. I hear 4 hours. Do I hear 5 hours? Do I hear 6 hours? 10.5 hours. I don't want to talk to my best friend for 10.5 hours. I think they were filibustering at that point, just reading things in their room. But the point is, there was a promise fulfilled, and that actually got a lot of press, because especially in the earlier days, had no marketing department, all word of mouth. This is even really before social media. But these kind of stories started to spread of fulfilling on these promises, delivering on these promises, and some great service experiences that I will go into as well. Behind this is a culture that really drives the service experience. So, ranked in the top companies as Fortune Best Places to Work. But first, I want to talk about just culture itself. So when you take a look at a picture like this, who would you say is in charge? Who's in charge? Who's running the show here? Yeah, the water. The river is running the show. This is the analogy I like to think about with culture, is that you've got your certain levers that you can do things with, but if you don't have a fundamental understanding of how the river works, how the water works, you're really going to be up the creek. So when we're talking about culture, what amazes me talking about culture is that a lot of people will shrink to this and say, oh, culture. Culture, no, what is that? That's the soft stuff. That's just the ping pong tables, that's the barbecues, that's the even good things like appreciation. And you know, I'll talk to these business leaders who'll say, I'm about the bottom line. Culture's the soft stuff. I don't really touch that. And it amazes me because, one, if you want to talk about the bottom line, let's talk about the bottom line. And that's this, is that the Fortune Best Places to Work Index outperforms even larger index than the S&P 500, the Russell 3000. So the financial results are there, for one. But two, I ask you this question, is who has the strongest culture? Who would you guess? Oftentimes here, Google, and I'll tell you, it is not Zappos. Some people say Disney. And the one that I've come to know that I have the most appreciation for as having the strongest culture is these people. Military, or even more specifically, special forces. Why? Because when they talk about values, when they talk about the creed that they have, the earning the trident, the SEAL code, these aren't values that are just placed on a wall. If they don't hire by these, fire by them, live by them, drive them, people will literally die. People will literally die. So I don't know anybody more hardcore than this. And I use the word stronger rather than best. Because as you'll see in a moment when I show you some of this Zappos culture, some of you are going to be like, I don't want that at all. This looks horrible. And others are going to love it. Because the thing is, strong culture isn't about good or bad. Good or bad is a personal decision. Strong means what you believe, what you say, and what you do are all in alignment. So there can even be negative, strong cultures. I love when people come on tour through it, because they'd say, some people either say, oh my God, this is amazing, I want to work here, and others people say, this is my nightmare. This looks like a place for 8-year-olds, and guess what it is? The motto for HR was actually, if it works for an 8-year-old, it works at Zappos. But before you entirely write this off as something that's, just this other culture, again, I was saying strong as a differentiator between good and bad. But before you write this off necessarily, think about this. This is from the founders of Genentech. We got to still have fun. We got to still dress up in crazy outfits and do silly things. Genentech. I can't imagine a more serious company, a biotech company that loves to get dressed up and have fun. So, just a counterpoint there. Since then, Tony had brought me in to develop this, Zappos Insights, which is the business unit that would teach all about customer service and world-class culture. And it really just was formulated organically because people kept coming in and asking to go on tour. It started off with vendors coming in, and they would love the tour so much. And tour, there's actually nothing fancy happening on it, just watching people work. And
there were some fun things here and there. Like, one of the things you could do, I totally recommend this for your call center, by the way, if you have one, is anybody at any moment could call for a 1-minute dance party. A 1-minute dance party. So they would literally just say, can I put you on hold for one moment? They just get the energy up. And so you'd see things like this on the tour. And then Tony actually had the idea to say, why don't we turn this into a business? Because so many people are coming through and asking, how do you do this? How do you get people who aren't even paid a lot to develop world-class customer service? How do you have a place to work where people just love to be there all the time? Having a 1% acceptance rate of people applying because the word got out so much of it being a fun place to work. And since launching Zappos Insights, had all kinds of businesses come through, and I've had just the absolute pleasure and honor of consulting for some of the best companies in the world, everything from college graduates all the way up to Procter & Gamble and Google International. And I've learned from them, and I love this kind of moment because I get to essentially compress 12 years worth of knowledge into this tiny window to give you some of the best ideas, tips, and tricks that you can use and take home and use in your business. I also put them into my book, The Culture Blueprint, The Guide to the High-Performance Workplace. At the end, I'm going to give you all a free copy of the total audio book of this, so just stay tuned on that. I hate when people sell on stage, right? So this is just going to be completely free for everybody. So the way that we're going to cover this is on 3 levels, and it's going to go from abstract to very, very specific. So it covers you if you're more of a theoretical person, all the way down to give me the hack, something that I can do immediately. And that's going to be in the form of principles, processes, and practices. Principles, processes, and practices. So let's get into it. First principle. The first value, I'm going to show you them all in a moment, but the first value at Zappos is deliver wow through service. Deliver wow through service. And there's a word that specifically is missing from there. Can you hear it? What word is actually intentionally left out of deliver wow through service? Customer. Why would a number 1 customer service company leave the word customer out of all of its values? Can you guess? Yeah, because everyone is the customer. Everyone is the customer. And so that's why this first principle is really about not customer service, but a culture of service. How do you develop a culture of service? Well, first of all, I don't necessarily recommend this to all companies. I recommend it to you being in the customer service industry, but we got differentiated for service. Google, when I visited there, it's so funny how at Zappos, everybody is so social. At Google, I go to somebody up in the brunch, or the buffet, and it was like they thought a robot was talking to them because they didn't know me. And they're not social at all. They optimize for engineering and education and academics. Apple optimizes for excellence. I'm convinced that they don't care as much about the customer as much as they care about just being excellent in everything they do. So we optimize for service. And that first value there is deliver wow through service. But it's also played with these different values it took a year to come up with these. But each of them is trained for at least an hour each in a training. And this is what's key. This is absolutely key. And I'm going to highlight the key points because I know it's a long day, it's a long conference, but I'll highlight these key ones for you to really remember. And I know not everybody here has a notebook to remember these. But the key differentiator for this one is it's all about this one point. If you hire people who love to be of service, that's like 90% of the work. Right? We found that if we hire somebody who's got a lot of customer service experience, they might not love it, and then they're not as good of a candidate. So how do you determine in the interview process that somebody's going to love service? Well, you can't go direct on the nose, what I say on the nose. You never would say it directly, because of course somebody's just going to say, yes, of course I love to be of service. Instead, you'd ask this question of, please tell me about a time when you helped somebody out when you didn't have to. Tell me about a time when you helped somebody out when you didn't have to. People who like to be of service will answer that immediately. People who don't will really, really struggle with that. Because what we found is with values, if people live the values, you've got to fit. If they don't, it's really hard to train for that. You can train for skills all day, every day. But values are different. So deliver wow through service is the main one. But for each of these, we'd have questions for determining if people actually live them. Embrace and drive change. Tell me about a time when a change happened when you didn't like it. Create fun and a little weirdness. How weird are you on a scale from 0 to 10? And this is where I encourage people to figure out what is specific about your culture and your teams that you love that somebody's going to fit in there and not want to leave, because we all know how high turnover costs can be, right? So I'll just give you an example with this of how unique you can make it. With the create fun and a little weirdness one of the questions, I'm not kidding, is you're going through it, you say, okay, Mr. Johnson, thank you. You've got all this experience at Citibank. It's fantastic. What is your favorite swear word? And you'd have to answer the question. Because Zappos is one of those, I don't know if you know what I mean by this, borderline inappropriate cultures. You know, have you ever said a joke and you're like, yes, they didn't send me to HR. I got that one through, right? It's like that kind of culture. So you got to see, can they roll with it? And this is how you can see if they roll with it, is you say, okay, great. Thank you for answering that, Mr. Johnson. Would you please use that word in your next 4 answers? I love these kind of hacks with it. We'd also ask, how lucky are you on a scale of 0 to 10? Because lucky people are good teammates. Whereas people who feel like they're unlucky, I've never had anything. Nobody's ever helped me. I've had to work everything on my own my whole life. Not necessarily the best team members. So like I said, each of these has questions behind it. And I've got my contact information at the end. If you'd like the questions, I can send them to you as well. But again, each of these is not only trained, but people memorize them, they know them. And the training is, this is why I connect the culture back to the Navy SEALs, right? I mean, obviously it's not as rigorous as the Navy SEALs, but there are standards. Because this is a general principle within human nature as well, which is people work to keep what they worked for. They don't tend to appreciate what's simply handed to them. So part of the process is for 4 weeks of training, you have to show up at 7 a.m. every day or you're cut. You have to get a 90% or above on the quiz. And you get plenty of coaching and mentoring. And here's the other thing we became known for, is paying people to quit. Of saying, look, you made it past this interview process, which is really tough. I think recruiting and training is the core of culture. If you don't think this is for you, here's a month's salary to quit. Why? Because we found that bad hires can do some bad things. I mean, it's you don't want somebody who doesn't want to be there. It's all about the opt-in. And while the customer service experience itself can be a whole series of touch points that, you know, we could do a whole day on how to create the entire service experience, it still comes down to some of these principles and techniques I'm going to show you. So the first, as we said, not customer service, it's culture of service. And the second is this idea that frustration is gold. Frustration is gold. What do I mean by that? Well, take this story about Richard Branson when he was running the Virgin companies. This is what blew me away, is that he said he actually not only made it a practice, but loved reading customer complaints. Loved it. He said, I don't need an innovation department. They're handing me the answers right here. Right? Because this is the thing that you actually don't want is this. They just go away. They don't say a word. They don't say anything. They just leave. That's not what you want. You want, when you're taking those calls, those complaints are gold. And here's the next point I'm going to share with you. This is the thing you might remember from the whole speech, which is the ROI on frustration, the ROI on customer service, because the finance department actually ran the numbers and found this. One is that the lifetime value, the average lifetime value of a Zappos customer buying shoes is $200. Now here's the kicker. When that data was cross-referenced by people who had called in, had an issue, and had it resolved, that customer lifetime value went up to 6 times higher. 6 times higher from going from a negative experience to a positive experience than just a plain positive experience. So we had a little joke inside Zappos that was, a lot of it was mailing issues that we had to solve. And we said we wouldn't be the #1 customer service brand if UPS didn't screw up 10,000 times a day. And we had to do things to make up for it. But this is why I hope that this is a key point to think about reframing your viewpoint essentially from cost center to profit center. That you are actually driving revenue and profits through these processes that you're creating. You are not a cost center. You can be a profit center.